Ever wonder how fortunes are really made? We hear all these stories about brilliant inventors and disruptive ideas. But is that the whole picture? Or is there another way? A kind of hidden path to getting incredibly rich? Well, today, we're going to dig into that. Turns out, there are really only two ways to make a fortune. You either create it, or you take it. So, let's just get right to it. The big question, how is great wealth actually made? And I'm not talking about get-rich-quick schemes here. When you really dig down into the bedrock of economics and history, you find this really fascinating split.
And you know what? It really just boils down to this simple idea. There are two fundamental paths. That's it. One is all about creating something new. The other? Well, that one's about taking what's already there. And these two approaches, they pretty much shape our entire economy. If you get this, you start to see the world in a whole new way.
Okay, so here's what we've got on tap. We're going to look at creators versus extractors. Then we'll peek inside the rent seeker's playbook. After that, we'll get into the great wealth debate, talk about why this all matters so much, and finish with a big final question.
All right, first up, creators versus extractors. This is really the core idea of this whole explainer, so let's really get into it.
So, on one hand, you've got value creation. Think of this as a positive-sum game. What does that mean? It means you're basically baking a bigger pie for everyone. You're creating new stuff, new services, new markets. The whole economy grows. But then, you've got the other side, rent-seeking. This is a zero-sum game. The pie isn't getting any bigger. Instead, it's all about figuring out how to get a bigger slice for yourself, usually by rigging the rules, without actually baking anything new.
There's this great old analogy that just nails it. Picture a king, right? He puts a big chain across a river and starts charging every ship that wants to pass. Now think about it. He didn't build the river. He didn't make shipping any faster or safer. Nope. He just found a choke point and put up a toll booth. That, right there, is the very essence of rent-seeking.
Okay, so that's the old school version. But how does this play out in the modern world? Well, for that, we need to open up the rent seeker's playbook and look at the actual mechanics of value extraction.
In the playbook, well, it starts with some real classics you've probably heard of. We're talking about things like good old-fashioned bribery and bid rigging. There's cronyism, where who you know gets you the government contract. Regulatory capture, which is a fancy way of saying an industry gets to write its own rules. And of course, lobbying for special subsidies or tariffs, and good old nepotism. But here's the thing. It's not just about these old-school, smoke-filled room kinds of deals anymore. Not at all. Technology has completely changed the game. It's basically supercharged rent-seeking, creating these brand new and often way more subtle ways to extract value from all of us.
So, for example, you have what some people call the algorithmic rentier. This is a totally modern form of rent-seeking. Instead of lobbying politicians, you use data and algorithms to create a kind of monopoly. A textbook case is the RealPage software. Landlords all over the country were allegedly using it, and the software would suggest rent prices, which, surprise, surprise, just kept going up. It basically created this cartel-like behavior, all powered by an algorithm, to squeeze tenants for more money.
And when you scale this up to the global level, it becomes this massive, industrial-scale corruption. And there's a pretty standard playbook. Step 1. Create a whole network of anonymous shell companies. Step 2. Bribe some officials to get a big contract. Step 3. Jack up the cost of that contract by, say, 20 or 30%. And Step 4. Launder all those profits through the international banking system. It's a well-oiled machine.
And the amount of money we're talking about here is just mind-boggling. I mean, these are not small-time operations. The Airbus bribery scheme ended in a $4 billion fine. Siemens got hit with a $1.6 billion penalty for global corruption. And the famous Operation Car Wash scandal in Brazil, that involved over $1 billion just in bribes. This is wealth extraction on a truly global scale.
So this is where things get really interesting and, frankly, a little complicated. It brings us to what you could call the great wealth debate. Because, look, in the real world, the line between creating value and just extracting it, well, it can get super, super blurry.
Because here's the messy truth, right? Most of the biggest success stories we see, they aren't purely one or the other. They're often this powerful mix of genuine, brilliant innovation combined with some really savvy and sometimes pretty ruthless positioning within the system as it already exists.
A perfect example is Amazon. I mean, on the one hand, from a value creation standpoint, it's an absolute marvel, right?
It totally revolutionized logistics, created millions of jobs, made shopping unbelievably convenient. But, on the other hand, there's the rent-seeking argument, that it's basically a platform monopoly that squeezes sellers with high fees and even uses their data to launch competing products. It's like they're taxing innovation on their own platform. So which is it? It's complicated.
Or how about Big Pharma? The whole idea behind a patent is to encourage innovation. It's a kind of temporary government-granted monopoly, so companies are willing to spend billions on R&D for new drugs. That's pure value creation. But that system can be twisted. You see tactics like patent evergreening, where companies make tiny tweaks to keep generics off the market for longer. And then you get the extreme cases, like Martin Shkreli, who famously took a life-saving drug and hiked the price overnight from $13.50 a pill to $750. That's not innovation. That's just pure extraction.
So you see, the big takeaway here is that the real world is messy. It's almost never just black or white. And that leads us to the real question, the most important one, which is this. How do we actually structure our systems to encourage all that amazing value creation while closing the loopholes for the rent-seeking and the extraction?
And we really need to figure that out, because this isn't just some abstract debate for economists. When a whole economy starts to lean too heavily towards extraction, the consequences for society are huge, and they are very, very real. I mean, when rent-seeking becomes the main game in town, the costs are just enormous. On the economic front, it kills innovation. Why bother inventing something new if it's easier and more profitable to just lobby the government? Socially, it's like pouring gasoline on the fire of inequality. And politically, it just eats away at public trust and the rule of law because everyone starts to see that the game is rigged. Just to put a number on it, look at this, $4.5 billion. That's how much money was allegedly siphoned out of Malaysia's 1MDB development fund. That was money that was supposed to be for public projects, for the people, just extracted.
Or how about this number? Over 400%. That can be the annual interest rate from a payday loan. And the companies who run them spend millions of dollars lobbying to make sure there are no caps on those rates. It's a business model that is literally built on extracting money from people when they are at their most desperate.
And it's no surprise that, as the IMF has shown, this whole system hits the poorest people the hardest. They're the ones who might have to pay a bribe just to get a basic public service. They're the ones who suffer when money for schools or hospitals gets diverted. It's a system that doesn't just keep people poor, it actively makes it harder for them to get ahead.
So, okay, all of this, everything we've talked about, it all leads to one final and I think most important question. It's a question that really challenges all of us to think about the kind of future we want to build.
And here it is. This is the big question we want to leave you with. How do we build a system that actually rewards creating value, not just capturing it? How do we make sure we're celebrating the builders, the innovators, the problem solvers, and not just the people who are best at gaming the system? You know, figuring that out, that's not just some homework for economists. It's pretty much the defining challenge for all of us.